What's up, everybody? Welcome to Draft Chaff. This is episode number 53. We did it. It's our 1 year anniversary. I can't believe we're here. Ben, do you have anything to say?
Well, the only thing that comes to mind is you're listening to Draft Chaff. little throwback for the OGs.
Absolutely. We'll get into a little bit more on that in just a minute. By the way, that was Ben. I totally botched the intro there, but you know what? We're gonna roll with it.
Look, if this podcast was perfect, it probably wouldn't exist anymore. I think it's the flaws that keep us going, keep us motivated.
That is our fuel. But yeah, this week is our anniversary. Holy crap, dude! We're here. It's been a full year.
Yeah.
To give you an agenda on what we're doing this week, we are walking through the history of Draft Chaff, the whole shebang from the beginning of how the show was really incepted into how we got to where we are now. A lot of the in-between for folks who haven't really been here the whole ride, and, you know, a little bit of nostalgia for those who have. So we'll go through that, and then we have a bunch of questions to answer from folks in the Discord and listeners and such, so we'll get through those as well. Without further ado, before we get into that, we are going to, of course, have our usual housekeeping. If you are listening to this and you're new to the show, you just found it maybe through some of the giveaways we've been doing this week, or you stumbled on it on Reddit or something else. If you're not in the Discord, you're doing yourself a disservice. Definitely jump into the Discord. We are talking about a whole bunch of different stuff there. I mean, the new AFR spoilers, the Forgotten Realms spoilers for the D&D set are going on, so we're going to be, they're just getting started. So we're going to be talking about those a lot in the next really coming days here, so definitely jump in if you're interested in talking about all those spoilers that are going to be coming up. We've got a lot. We actually are just kicking off a sealed league, thanks to one of our Discord members, Andy. Sounds like it's going to be really fun. We're going to be playing with a bunch of standard sets right now, but yeah, that's going to be super fun. Hopefully that kicks off and it's something we can do on a recurring basis. We have a bunch of folks who play EDH on a relatively regular basis, so if you're into all that, definitely check out the show. We would really appreciate you jumping into the Discord and communicating with us there. Also, if you're interested in supporting the show, you can do so on Patreon at patreon.com/draftchaffpod. That is our primary and really only sponsor as of now. We have a ton of options there for different tiers, whether you want to give just a couple bucks a month or, you know, even more. Things like stickers, access to the full show notes that we have, custom deck building opportunities with us, access to unedited and uncut versions of the show with, you know, pre and post show nonsense most of the time. And, you know, you get a shout out on the show, all sorts of different things. One of those things that we have a number of global Patreon goals as well. And one of those in the past was getting our episodes up on YouTube. And because of you lovely patrons, we are now doing that. So, you know, things like that to come. And we have a bunch of other ideas for these more global sort of power-ups that are just going to help everybody in the community. So check out the Patreon if you're interested, patreon.com/draftchaffpod. Next up, we wanted to do a little brief reminder. We are still running a bunch of giveaways this week. At the time of recording, it's Wednesday, so we still have a few to run through. Today's giveaway, as you're listening to this on Friday, is the super special playmat, which is awesome. Very excited for that. Hope you guys are as excited about it as we are. But stay tuned for that. We're going to be announcing the winners to all the giveaways this week tomorrow, Saturday, June 26th. So stay tuned for that. You're going to see that in the Discord and on Twitter as well. And then we'll probably mention them again in the show the following week, just to make sure that everybody gets those in case you win and you don't follow us on Twitter or in the Discord or something like that. But definitely do that. All right. That brings us to our next sort of section of the show, which is our Cracker Draft type thing. And Ben's got something special for us here.
Yeah, so it's the year anniversary. It's a miracle we lasted this long. You know what else? It's a miracle has lasted this long? Modern. I can't believe Wizards hasn't killed it yet, so I thought in honor of Modern and us surviving, I'd crack open some Modern Horizons 2. Now, unfortunately, I could not get my hands on a draft booster. I looked at multiple stores, different local game stores. I could only find a set booster. So it's not going to be quite the same experience as opening up a draft booster, but make sure you get that nice audio in there. That nice pack opening. Beautiful. So we'll still treat it as if it's a draft booster. We'll see what we pick from this. Now, to be honest, I don't know too much about the MH2 limited environment. I've seen a bit of gameplay. I haven't drafted it myself yet. I've kind of been saving my first impression for when we actually play against each other, where Zach and I are doing a little kind of sealed thing on our own at some point in the next week. So I wanted to kind of not spoil myself too much, but I suppose this will be my first look into a pack. Now, I guess I opened the pack backwards. That's a little strange. There's a food token in the back, but then when I move the cards aside, then there's the backs of cards. Whatever. I don't know. This doesn't make any sense. Let's just start from the top. So there's a nice art card there. It's art card for Razortide Bridge. Nice work, Rob Alexander. It's one of the indestructible lands, but can't draft that. First out of the pack, we've got a basic swamp. Then we've got something called Torok's Canticle. 3 and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a card. That player discards that card, then discards a card at random. It's kind of like a throwback to him, the Torok. This feels like a really expensive effect. This feels overpriced, right?
Yeah, not super interested.
Next up, we've got Cabal Initiate. This is 1 in the black for a 2/1 human warlock creature. It has discard a card, it gains lifelink until end of turn, and it has Threshold. Cabal Initiate gets +1/+2 as long as there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard. It's a free discard outlet.
Yeah, that's true.
But I feel like there's better. I know there's a 4-drop. I think it's like a dog or a wolf or something, and that's also a free discard outlet. This is probably the worst one of those.
Yeah, that doesn't seem very exciting.
Next up, we've got Mist Vault Bridge. This is one of those artifact lands. ETB is tapped. It's indestructible, and it adds blue or black.
Sure. I mean, lands are fine. I don't think I care enough about first picking one in this format, though. I'm with you, though. I really don't know the format almost at all. I haven't drafted it. I hardly looked into it because we didn't cover it on the show, and I tend to not play on MTGO, so I'm not super familiar with the format. But if we open a Chatterfang, I'm snapping that off.
Yeah, I also, I don't know. Once you're spoiled with Arena for so long, playing on MTGO just kind of hurts. I mean, I have heard that the format is very multicolor driven. I don't know if Mist Vault Bridge is one of the ones that's higher valued. I think the artifact colors do border on blue and red, though. I don't know how much they touch into black. I think black is mainly the discard and graveyard color. But next up, we've got, well, I guess this is the themed portion of the pack, because we've got Dihada's Ploy. This is 1 blue-black for an instant. You draw 2 cards, then discard a card. You gain life equal to the number of cards you've discarded this turn. It also has Jumpstart. You may cast this card from your graveyard by discarding a card in addition to paying its other costs, then exile this card. So a neat little card draw spell. I guess it almost has like Kicker of its own mana cost. You kind of do it again the same turn, and with Kicker being like you discard a card and then also pay the cost. It's a little weird, but you gain a little life if you do this twice in the same turn. And also it just kind of rewards you for having, I guess, Jumpstarted it. Neat design, but
yeah, I mean, it pairs well with any of your other discard effects, should you have any. Again, not super exciting.
Next up is a pretty sweet one, Kaleidoscorch. Sick name. 1 in a red. It's a sorcery with Converge. Kaleidoscorch deals X damage to any target, where X is the number of colors of mana spent to cast the spell, and it has flashback for 4 and a red. So you're kind of locked into casting this for 2. At first, unless your opponent has something like a Thalia in play, like an effect that increases its cost. But then you can flash it back for up to 5 damage, depending on how many colors you've got in your deck. And I have seen people playing these artifact multicolor lands, so I think this is a pretty high pick.
Yeah, I mean, it seems basic. It's a 2-drop, which, just in limited formats in general, like, you want to prioritize those to some degree. And this is one that scales well with the game, so it seems pretty good. It's probably the pick so far.
Next up, we've got Road to Ruin. This is one of those nice Amonkhet split cards, which I do love the design of these. They're a lot of fun. So Road is 2 and a green for an instant. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. And then Ruin is 1 red. It has Aftermath. It's a sorcery, which means you can cast that spell only from your graveyard. Doesn't matter how it got there. You can cast Road first, then Ruin after, or if you can get this in the graveyard somehow, just cast Ruin. Ruin deals damage to target creature equal to the number of lands you control. Sick. Love this card. This is fantastic design. Dope. Next up, we've got Strike It Rich. This is 1 red for a sorcery. Create a treasure token. Flashback 2 and a red. Huh.
Okay. I guess that might be good in like a very, very, very heavy like affinity style deck, like a deck that cares about artifacts a lot, or you just really need the ramp. But otherwise, I don't want to pay that much mana for this effect. Yeah,
it's honestly not. I'd struggle to call it ramp too. This is, I think, maybe a storm card for red-green storm.
Could be.
But it doesn't have it. Card draw. It's just kind of an extra. I don't know. It's just kind of adds a storm count. Whatever. And I guess if you flash it back, that helps too. It's a card. I could see like the kinds of decks that would make best use of this are the kinds of decks that I absolutely cannot stand playing. The red like eggs decks or artifact nonsense. No, thank you. I'll stick with what I've got.
Manamorphose, this is not.
Yeah, no. Ooh, we got a rare. This one is Master of Death. This is 1 blue black for a 3/1 zombie wizard. When it enters the battlefield, surveil 2. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Master of Death is in your graveyard, you may pay 1 life. If you do, return it to your hand.
So it's a nice little recurring creature that surveils, which can be really great if you have a lot of graveyard shenanigans going on. Otherwise, it's a 3/1 that you're not unhappy to trade off.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems fine. I think that's a fine card. I'd probably take it over anything else we've seen so far. I mean, it is a multicolored card, so you got to keep that into consideration. But I mean, black blue does seem to be having a decent amount of the whole graveyard thing going on. So
this is also an infinite discard outlet. I mean, paying 1 life, who cares? You can discard this to. I mean, we saw just in this own pack a creature-based effect that cared about discard as well as a jumpstart. So that really kind of negates that discarding a card problem. And that's, perhaps not the best pull in the world, but, still kind of cool. Aren't you building like a Sultai graveyard commander deck? You want this?
I am. Perhaps.
Ooh, next up is, if that last one was for you, this one's for me. Solitary Confinement, 2 and a white enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Solitary Confinement unless you discard a card. Skip your draw step. You have Shroud. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to you.
Yeah, I love that card. I used to play it in Zedru, EDH.
This is a reprint.
Oh, yeah.
I guess in like a new to modern reprint.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, this is funny. I guess if you're playing a Pillow 40 enough deck where like you're drawing cards through white Pillow Fort-esque like shrines or some effect that you don't really care about, that's kind of incidental. You don't really care about the whole skip your draw step thing if you're triggering off like enchantresses and that type of thing. I don't know. I might make a Pillow 4 deck with something like this.
Well, that's why I played it in Zedru, because Zedru lets you give away all your stuff, and then you draw cards for all the things you've given away. So you just play Solitary Confinement, nobody can touch you, and you just draw a million cards anyway.
Right, that's sweet. So next up, we've got an old art card here. This is Glimmer Baron, which I believe is one of the more sought-after commons in the set. This is green for a 1/2 oof with absolutely adorable art. I don't know if you can see that there.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Just a little... I'm not entirely sure what an oof is, but it looks pretty cute. It has sacrifice a token. Glimmer Baron gets +2/+2 until end of turn. It's an Atog, I guess.
Yeah.
And last but not least, I'll say we missed out on the monetary value of this pack, but we certainly earned the fun. This last card, I think, is going to be for you. It is a foil sketch card. At least it looks foil. I can't really tell for sure in my light right now. I think it's foil, though. It's
probably one of the Esh
foils. Yeah, a foil art card. Like one of the sketch ones. This is Ravenous Squirrel.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Ship it.
This is black-green hybrid. So I guess 1 Witherbloom for a 1/1 squirrel. Whenever you sacrifice an artifact or a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on Ravenous Squirrel. And it has 1 black-green, sacrifice an artifact or creature. You gain 1 life and draw a card. And this is kind of funny. Instead of flavor text, it's replaced with the art direction for the card.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
the art direction reads, action. This is a squirrel who eats everything.
That's awesome.
Nice. I'll be putting those aside in a pile. We can honestly just add those up, and Zach and I are going to be cracking a box of this together at some point. So we will have to see if we can get a little more lucky on our pulls. I don't know. Hoping to get a Ragavan, maybe some fetches, something like that. But they can't all be winners.
That's true. I guess we don't have like a real pick for that pack because neither of us know the format. It was just kind of a like, let's open a pack and see what we get kind of thing. I probably would still have taken the
Master of Death, right?
Yeah, the Master of Death, the 3-mana 3/1. It just has so much good synergy with the rest of the format that I think I think it's a fair pick. Ravenous Squirrel's up there too, though. I think that's a great card.
Yeah, I mean, not that pack was clearly seeded, but I would probably go with the Master of Death. Seems kind of fun.
All right, on to our Teferi Tibalt. If you're new to the show, this is the section where Ben and I talk about a high and a low from the previous week, kind of give you an insight into what's going on in our lives outside of the show. So, Ben, why don't you kick us off?
Right, so my Teferi this week is that it's the last week of school, which means very soon, in exactly a week from right now when we're recording, I'm going to be free, at least for a while. We've got some work to do over the summer, but for the most part, I'm going to be spending the summer laying on the beach, surfing, doing nothing, probably seeing people I haven't seen in a while. So good stuff ahead. That's exciting. I've kind of been doing pretty well in limited recently. I've switched over to traditional drafts. I've kind of missed drafting with people and drafting sideboard cards, and I think I kind of got into a best of one funk where I was doing fine, but I wasn't really happy. And I think despite the less than ideal prize payout, if you can manage to 3-0 a traditional draft, I mean, I suppose we can crunch the numbers on this, but at least every 3 drafts you net positive, and that's been working so far. So I've been having fun doing that. And my last Teferi, there's this podcast that I'm on, and it just hit its year anniversary, so that's pretty cool. I think that's worth celebrating.
Oh, sweet! Congrats.
Yeah.
And actually, to just to that point about traditional, there was a Twitter thread going on. I think it was started by Sirkovitz. I could be wrong about that. It might have been started by Hululu, but both were involved in the conversation, and it was discussing the expected value of best of 1 versus best of 3 limited, and it turns out they're actually much, much closer with the average person's win rate than you would have anticipated. So
I'll have to check that out. I did miss the sideboarding and playing around certain cards. I found that I think Test of Talents and Negate have gone way up in my book since I've been playing in best of 3. Now that I know, for example, I was able to snag like a body of research with the Test of Talents, like just getting good value out of cards that might not see such, I guess, strong swingy play in best of 1. Although I do think they're main deckable in best of 1 still. Just sometimes they fall flat. And my Tybalt this week, it's time for me to start prepping to move. I move in about a month. Yeah, I got to start packing stuff up. On one hand, it's nice to be able to go through and sort things and kind of self-inventory. I got to do all the unfun stuff. For example, I have no idea how I'm getting some of this stuff out my door. I have to do a little bit of prep work for that. But, I'll worry about that next week,
Yeah, you'll say that next week and the week after, and then you'll be like, I have to move tomorrow, and I haven't prepped a single thing.
It's fine.
If you need any help, definitely let me know, because I don't have a big car, but I can help move things over.
Will do. Would you like to take my entire Magic the Gathering collection? I trust that you will take anything too valuable out of there,
Yeah, sure. Right. I definitely won't cannibalize your Bruna deck because it's an atrocity that doesn't deserve to be. Although you did convert it to be more control related, which really does make me feel good. So
look, I put Counterspell in that deck.
It's true. It's true.
I never cast Counterspell.
Man after my own heart.
How about you?
Yeah, so for me, well, obviously we've been doing the show for a year, and I think honestly the biggest surprise, outside of the fact that we're even still doing this, because I don't know that, and again, we'll get into all this in a bit, I don't know that either of us ever expected we would be doing this a year after we started, but to me, the more surprising bit is that it's already been a year. Like, that... It's kind of funny because the pandemic made everything feel really slow. I felt like 2020 felt like a very long year.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in terms of doing the podcast, it does not feel like it was long at all. I feel like we just started doing this thing.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah.
So very surprising, and it's just really awesome to see that there are still people who listen and come back week after week, and people who really look for the show or like are excited when the new episodes come out. It's really, really awesome. Can't thank all of our fans and supporters enough. It's been a cool ride, and we're excited for what's coming next.
Don't get all sappy yet. We have a whole section of the show just for that.
That's true. That's true. Other parts of my Teferi, I had a really solid return to drafting this week with Theros Beyond Death. I was telling Ben before the show, I don't think I've done a single draft for something like 2 to 3 weeks. I did go away for a week, like into the middle of the woods with no internet access, so that was part of that, but it had been a while since I'd done a draft, and I was not really familiar with Theros Beyond Death. I hardly drafted that format. Most of that format that I played was sealed originally because I took a few months long hiatus from Magic right after that set came out. So didn't do a ton of drafting there. But I did fine. I drafted a deck that went 6-3 and don't really think it deserved to. And I had one game that was like
solid.
It was okay, but it was just, I mean, it really just relied on the back of Underworld Ragehound. Like, I just had 3 of those and a handful of okay removal spells, and it was just like, all right, I'm just gonna slam a bunch of 4/2s and 3/1s and hope that it works.
Myers Grasp, like that card's great.
That's true. My Tybalt this week is that I'm still a little congested and have a bit of a small cough, but it's far better than it was 2 days ago when we recorded the last episode, or 3 days ago when we recorded the last episode. So yeah, it's getting there. Very excited that's going away, and I'm starting to feel more myself.
Sweet.
Now, typically at this point in the show, we would have a listener question. However, we have a lot of listener questions today, so we were going to skip the main one for the show and just get into our main topic.
So the main topic is we did it again. we made it a year. This is the part where we can get a little sappy. So we did it. Thank you as the listener for sticking with us and making this kind of wild idea into reality. We were talking a bit before the show about how few creations actually take off. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure if we know why people started listening to us. I honestly thought that we might do this for forever and never pass like 2 or 3 listens, you know? So to you listening right now, honestly, just thank you. It means the world to us. We are shocked and stunned by this every day, but it's just been a fantastic experience and has honestly made quarantine and COVID, like, this is one of the highlights for me. Like, when I look back in 15 years at the pandemic and someone asks me, like, what did you do to get through it? I'm going to think, well, this podcast happened and I got introduced to all these awesome people online, and it is actually a community. And then who knows what happens next after that. So shout out to all of you that have been listening to us ramble about nonsense and drafting and limited and life and whatever else has come up. Big shout out to the patrons that have donated their own money to us and really just shown that level of appreciation. We are speechless. You're all the best.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add there. It's absolutely incredible, and we really won't ever be able to thank you all enough, but thanks. Okay, so one of the things we wanted to make sure we did in this episode in particular, being that it's an anniversary, we're doing a lot of reflection, a lot of reminiscing, but we've never really told the full story of how the show started, and a lot of folks that are listening now are relatively new to the show. We've got a lot of new listeners and a lot more engagement in the Discord on a more recent level in the last couple of months here. So we figured it'd be nice to kind of take a nice chronological stroll down memory lane. We'll start off how the whole thing began and basically every step in between, every milestone in between, like till the anniversary now. And then we're going to go into your questions. So first of all, how it all began. And Ben, I kind of figure we can go with a little bit of a Q&A session here between the two of us, if that is something that you feel interested in, if you have any questions for me and, you know, back and forth or whatever. But basically, one day, like, I've always been the type of person who has had all these ideas floating around my head, and I'm just like, oh, that would be cool, but, like, I'm never going to do that. And, oh, this other thing would be pretty sweet. I'm never going to do that. And spoilers were coming out, and I was kind of starting to get back into Magic, but I was on a long hiatus, like I said, a few months long hiatus, probably close to a year actually, where I was playing Runeterra. I was actually writing Legends of Runeterra content for a website called runeterraccg.com, and I had been writing some articles for them. I actually started my own blog about Runeterra, and then they picked me up from the blog I had started, and I'd been writing there, and so I wasn't really playing Magic for quite a while, and every time a new set came out in that period, you know, Ben and I were still talking about it, even though I wasn't really playing the game.
Yeah.
And that's been something that connected Ben and I, Magic in general, has been something that connected Ben and I for a long time, like back in high school. So it's always been something that we've kind of used as a way to keep in touch, even when we weren't really like near each other or whatever. So we would still keep up with all the sets. And one day I was like kind of in a slump and realized like I don't necessarily know if I want to keep writing this Runeterra content, and I kind of want to get back into Magic because none of my friends played Runeterra, so it's kind of, it didn't really resonate the same way that Magic does.
To be fair, I tried, and it was fun. It was pretty fun. What was the Spores? Was that a deck in it? What's what I'm thinking of?
Don't remember. I don't think there are Spores. Oh, Puff Caps. Puff Caps.
Puff Caps. That was a very fun deck, and that's all I remember.
Yeah, I mean, the game's great. I actually am a huge fan of the game. The problem for me was just that I didn't have anybody in real life that I was, like, close with or, like, good friends with that played, so I didn't feel very invested and, like, didn't have people to turn to on a regular basis and be like, hey, look at this. I mean, I had some people online that I had met through writing content for Runeterra CCG, but all that to say, I eventually was just, Ben and I were talking about a set, the summer set that was coming out at the time. It might have been M21 or the one just before M21.
Mm.
And we were just chatting, and I was like, hey, we talk about Magic all the time. Do you want to just like do a podcast or something? Like, do you want to just record our conversations about Limited and see if it sticks? Like, just to be completely clear, neither of us were expecting to have like anything close to, you know, LR or Lords Limited status as far as like how big the show gets. And we're obviously not there right now even, but it was just like a, hey, we talk about this all the time anyway. Why don't we just record it and upload it and maybe somebody will get a kick out of it?
Yeah.
What was going through your head when I first suggested that though?
That was kind of the same thing almost. I remember one of the first things that I said to you was like, "We're not just going to be knockoff limited resources, are we?"
Yeah,
like,
that was a big thing at the beginning. Like we were like, we didn't want to try to replicate what we had already seen in those shows because A, we respect the people in those shows a lot, and B, they're already doing something that's really great, and to just try to copy that, A, we wouldn't get very far. Nobody would listen to us if we were knockoff LSV and Marshall.
Yeah.
And, you know, it just wouldn't have been genuine. So yeah, that was a big concern at the beginning.
I think also like we knew what we didn't want to be, but we also had to figure out what we were going to be. So that's why we kind of started spreading out all over the place. We started coming up with potential ideas for topics. That's where mental magic came from. That you know how people talk about like the Pixar brainstorming session where a bunch of dudes at a diner or something, they wrote down some stuff on a napkin and that turned into like Toy Story and Finding Nemo and all that. We had our equivalent of that, which was, I guess, like mental magic, the way we do format breakdowns, although that's also evolved over time, and the Flavor Town episodes, like these kind of things that give us our unique flair, which honestly I think we're still kind of sorting out, and I think that's fine. I don't think we have to know exactly what we are, but I think more recently we've kind of settled on this limited for people that, you know, want to focus on having the most fun when playing limited. And if winning is the fun way to do that, you know, that's great. But we kind of hit all the nails we can, I guess. Would you agree? Like I said, we're still figuring out what we're going to do. It's only been a year. That's not that much time.
Yeah, no, I do agree. And I think, you know, the way that whole conversation started too, like Ben was saying, was, okay, we know what we don't want to do. Or, let me back up a second. It was, okay, we're going to do a podcast. What's it going to be on? Well, it's going to be unlimited because that's what we talk about on a regular basis. That's what we know the best, whatever. That's what we have the most fun with. Fine. What don't we want to do? We found out what that was, and we kind of set some guidelines on, okay, we're not going to do XYZ. And then it was, yeah, as Ben said, like, what, okay, we know that, but what are we actually going to do then? And it started with a lot of the stuff that we wanted to see in some of the shows that we listened to, which was the mental magic aspect of things. Like, I think, and especially at the time with the pandemic being a huge problem and lockdowns being a big problem and everybody kind of going crazy for being inside for too long, one thing that we realized was like a lot of shows and like content creators in the magic ecosphere don't really talk about mental health as a full topic very often. Like a lot of folks will say, hey, mental health is important, take a break, or, you know, whatever. But not too many folks spend a ton of time on it as like full episodes or full segments of a show or something like that. So that was a big one that we wanted to talk about. And I know Ben and I both have gone through periods of time where our mental health wasn't necessarily in the best place. So it was something that, you know, maybe our experiences would be able to help other people because nobody's ever alone in that kind of situation. And we wanted to make people feel that way. So that was where that kind of started. And the Flavor Town thing was, flavor is one of our favorite things with Magic. Like that's one of the things that gets Ben and I talking about the show so frequently is just, or not the show, the game so frequently is just like, oh my gosh, did you see this card that they really did this, you know? And we were doing that with Strixhaven constantly with all the different flavor stuff they put in. And we both like lore a lot. So, you know, that kind of solidified there. But then we were like, okay, we need to actually talk about limited though, like as a format probably. And so that kind of evolved. We went with some of the more like the format breakdowns and, you know, took some lessons from other shows that we've seen like Limited Resources and Lords Limited and things. So it was kind of a hodgepodge at that point. Yeah,
I think ultimately this show is just two best friends talking about a game that they care about a lot.
Yeah, and hopefully that's how it comes across because that was the inceptual idea, right? Like that is what we set out to do. The funny part was we had like no idea what to call it at first. We were just like, I can't remember. Actually, we should have done a little bit more research and tried to track down some of the old names that we floated around because
those old files, man.
I don't remember almost any of the other suggestions we had, but we did bounce around a few of them. And I personally am more of I'm generally a more serious person, I think, on average than Ben is. Ben's a little more jovial, a little more fun.
I'd agree.
So I was like pitching these ideas that were like a little bit stricter. And I think Ben pitched the Draft Chaff idea.
I believe I did, yeah.
And it was just like, okay, that's kind of perfect because we are not experts. We are not pros. And we often have a lot of fun with just the stupid, crappy cards that nobody cares about. So it really made sense. And I think it worked pretty well.
I'm honestly excited to see what more we can do with Draft Chaff as a whole. Like I think it's getting about time we have a new episode that delves into Draft Chaff itself. the nature of Chaff, and perhaps with a more data-driven, limited focus. I like incorporating that now too. But the funny part about all of this was that it kind of stuck, and we got like, I think we got like 30 downloads on our first episode in a week, and we were like, holy crap, this is the best thing that's ever happened to us.
Yeah, I think I remember, because I run like all the accounts mostly, so I remember texting Ben and I was like, dude, and then it was just, that was like basically the whole text message, and then a couple minutes later I sent him a screenshot of like our Podbean account that said we had like 23 or 24 listens on the first episode, and we were both just like, that's a fluke. There's no way.
Like, how?
I was like, did you do that? Like, did you listen to that 24 times or something? Like,
just put it on repeat.
But then we put out a second episode, and the second episode was a little bit more than that, and the third was a little bit more than that, and it was a weird situation for us because I don't think we ever expected to get 24 listeners.
No, and I think something must have gone right. You could call it luck, you could call it fate, you could call it whatever you want, but I mean, there was some element of randomness to this.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm pretty glad that we lucked out here, you know?
Yeah, and then, so that kind of segues us into the next sort of subtopic we wanted to talk about as far as the history of the show goes, and that was picking up our first sponsorship. And what we kind of tried to do is, once we realized, okay, there are people who are coming back week after week and listening to the show, maybe we can do something with this. And I was like, let me just throw a dart on the board and see what sticks, because RuneterraCCG.com, that website I had been writing Runeterra content for, is actually owned by the same folks who own MTGA Zone, and it's run by the same people. So I was like, hey, I have a good relationship with the Runeterra side of that house. Maybe I can turn that into something for us. So we reached out, and at first it was like, yeah, I don't think we're ready for this from the MTGA Zone side. And we were like, okay, fine. That's totally cool. We just, thought we'd float it by. And eventually they came back to us maybe a month later and were like, hey, why don't we give this a shot? Which was huge for us because it meant we were going to get a much bigger viewership. Because that's the biggest problem, right? Is how do we even get this in front of people? Let alone them deciding they enjoy it after they've heard it already for the first time or whatever. But how do they even get to see it? What's the big problem? And MTGA Zone's popular, so.
Yeah, and that kind of led to the whole the rebrand with our current intro. As a matter of fact, some people might not even remember the original intro. Why don't we toss that up real quick?
You're listening to Draft Chaff. Episode 1.
Yeah, so we did end up having, like, we started out, I did all the stuff that I could with that, and I tend to be the type of person who's like, I have to do everything. So I try to learn photo manipulation and editing and all that kind of stuff. So I made our first logo, which I don't really know what we were going for, but it was like a chalkboardy kind of thing with like torn cards around it. And I was happy about the torn cards because that fit the chaff thing. And I guess we were trying to go for like a learning element and like we were teaching something. So that's why the chalkboard kind of made sense to me. But it did look a little rustic, and I don't think it quite fit what we were going for. Yeah. But the MTGA Zone folks hooked us up with Ashidin on Twitter. Great artist, and they redid all of our art, made it what you see now. And then I went and redid our intro music. Ben did the original, and then I did the groundwork for the one you hear today. And then Ben tweaked it a little bit to get it to where it is. So that's kind of the history on that. But that was great. Like, that was so big to us, like getting...
Yeah. Honestly, even though we're no longer affiliated with MTGA Zone, shout out to everybody there for kind of taking the risk on us. And, I think things like that need to happen in order for new content creators to really get off the ground sometimes. If no one helps each other out, then, what's going to become of like the creator space, so to speak.
Yeah, and I mean, to be 100% transparent there, they probably came out of that relationship at a loss. Like, they put out money for us to get the art redone. I think the goal was that we were going to... And I don't think we had great, clear understandings of what each of us were bringing to the table when we started that relationship. But, it started out as like, we were going to post stuff on their site, which was basically quote-unquote articles of our show. They were just like, we would post the episodes up on the site. And I think they expected us to do more writing, like actual articles as well, but that was never like super clearly stated, so it kind of got muddled a little bit, and then eventually that's kind of what led to them saying, hey, this isn't really working for us. We're gonna have to stop. But yeah, like Ben said, we got a huge break from that, and we had, I mean, from you can see like in our viewership history when that happened, because we went from like, at that point I think we were maybe at like 75 to 80 listeners on average, and then it spiked to like 400 like the next week.
Yeah. I think a lot of our current listeners probably found us through MTGA Zone. So again, shout out to MTGA Zone. Good stuff. And honestly, they're still making good stuff over there.
Oh yeah, I still use the site. Like, we still have a fine relationship with them. It just was like we're not really getting what we want or expected out of this, so we're just gonna stop it, and that's totally fine. No hard feelings there, but it gave us the break we needed, and then so that was like the end of the summer, right? We started the show at the end of June, and in fact, we started the show on June 26th was the first day that it aired of 2020, and so that was like the end of the summer, around August when we started that relationship with them. And then, 3 months later, I think it was November, we had our first guest on the show.
Speaking of lucking out, we had Marshall Sutcliffe on, which for those that are listening right now that haven't heard, like, go back and listen. That was, I mean, you can clearly hear while listening that we are just mind blown by the fact that he decided to take time out of his life to come on. I think, honestly, we set the bar really high for ourselves. Not that our subsequent guests haven't followed up. Obviously, they have. I think all of our guests have been just fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, the problem is, how do we maintain this quality of guests? Like, we set a high bar and we've hit it, but can we do this forever?
It's funny, though, because it actually did. So a little background on that. There's a long story into how we got Marshall on the show. I noticed that his Twitter DMs were open. I said, hey, we have this podcast. Would you like to join us as a guest? And he said, yes. That's the extent of it. He's a very chill dude, very easy to work with.
So cool.
But as to your point, Ben, he was so chill about it and was so open and like willing, like readily available to answer. It kind of spoiled us because we have reached out to some other folks and not gotten responses, which I think is totally normal. All of these people are very, very busy.
Yeah.
But it was like, oh, we'll just have X on the show. And like, that person's incredibly busy. It might not be, that easy to get to happen. And, it was so easy to get Marshall on the show that I think it kind of spoiled us a little bit. But
yeah, honestly. I hope someday that we get to go to another in-person Magic event and we get to see him in person, which we actually did meet him once years and years ago. But I hope we get to now that we've actually, talked to him and been on a call with him, because I don't know, I love to buy him a drink. Like he stuck his neck out for us. So honestly, what a stand-up guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was mind blowing. We got like a screenshot of all of us in the same chat room and stuff. It was really something special, and I think we'll probably both take to our graves. Like, that was amazing.
Yeah. So then from there, we kind of just have been on a slow growth since, right? We hit a Patreon goal. We started uploading YouTube content, and we're kind of continuing this like steady growth, which I hope we continue to do. And now the biggest update recently is that we're now writing for Cardsphere.
Yeah, so that's interesting because it's not technically a sponsorship. They aren't like paying us to produce the show, but we're writing articles for them, so it's definitely an affiliation. And the folks over there are great too. Like,
oh yeah.
So far we've had nothing but amazing interactions with them, and they have a great, very diverse group of folks writing for them and sponsored content through like the YouTube shows they have and the different podcasts they have. And it's been a pleasure working with them and looking forward to seeing where that takes us as well. Because, again, the more eyes, the more ears, the better. And we're happy to be affiliated with people who are actually genuine, good people.
Mm-hmm. What do you think we have to do to get on I Hate Your Deck, that new EDH show that they have?
Probably just keep writing. I'm sure when we are more known in the card sphere,
the card sphere,
like, those are interactions I think we could probably continue to build up, and it probably would be good to have some of them on as guests on our show, and that
totally
would lead to other things.
We definitely weren't talking about that earlier.
No, not at all. It is interesting though, because we are at the core a limited show, right? And we do like to do a lot of things that aren't limited centric. We talk about Commander relatively frequently, and we talk about random nonsense a lot. Mm-hmm. So there's like a fine line we tried to ride with the guests we have on, and try to get guests who are more limited focused in the content they create. But that's not, always necessarily what we'll do. We'll probably have like other random folks on who don't necessarily have much background in Limited, but are just great Magic personalities. And, that would be cool too. And actually that kind of goes into the next thing we want to mention. We are going to have a survey available because we're at the end of our first year. We wanted to make sure that we get valuable input from you, the listener. We haven't done this really yet, and we really should have. We should have been doing this far more frequently, and we hopefully will continue to do this far more frequently in the future. But we have a survey that we are going to send out. It's going to be in the episode description here. It'll be in the Discord. It'll be on Twitter. It'll be on the YouTube show. Please, 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 if you haven't interacted with us in any capacity at all, please fill out the survey. It'll help us greatly to not only like understand what you folks are getting out of the show, but also to know how we can continue to build the show in a way that you most enjoy listening to it. So it'll help everybody out if you fill that out. And props to Koga in the Discord for suggesting that we do this sooner rather than later. So thank you very much, Koga, for that.
Right. So I think it's time to jump into the second part of our show. We got some listener questions, and oh man, we've got some good stuff coming for this one. So we had this open opportunity for people to submit questions via voice if they wanted to, or via Discord. We do have a voice question coming up, so we'll get to that in a bit. But I want to start off with one from Rob Dies at the End. Ready? A group of cyber criminals takes down the entire Draft Chaff podcast, including all of the backups. They let you keep one episode. Which are you keeping? And I would like to add an asterisk. We should immediately rule out the Marshall one, right? Because that's both of our first pick.
Yeah, I mean, it is easily our first pick. I also, thank you, Rob, for expecting that we keep backups. We do.
I assume you do.
We do, but it's just very good of you to assume that of us. Given the nature of the show, I think it's not a far stretch to think we don't keep backups.
Right. Honestly, our interviews all feel so priceless. I almost want to discount all the interviews. I think out of our episodes, I've got to go Vector Theory. That's just my baby. I can't watch them delete that. These damn cyber criminals.
Honestly, I would have to agree with you. I definitely didn't have as much to do with that episode as you. You totally spearheaded that. Vector Theory is absolutely your baby. I'm going to defer to saying it's the podcast's baby, but that's because I'm selfish and want to also have a bit of that pie.
No.
But
it is. You're right.
But it is, it was your brainchild. You did come up with it. And I think I would want to keep that around because that's different. That's something that the Draft Chaff podcast has done that nobody else has, and is something that I think actually adds to the Magic community in a serious way. And I would like to keep some sort of legacy around of the show, if nothing else. Like if we did like a Flavor Town episode, it's probably something we had more fun actually recording, but not as lasting.
A follow-up question from Rob. The same group of cyber criminals really enjoyed your content. They downloaded Arena, and they had time to listen / read / watch exactly one piece of media about Magic, whether it's limited or otherwise. What article or podcast episode or video would be most helpful for them? Now, I'm assuming this could go for anything, and not just our content, in which case I would say Drafting the Hard Way.
That was exactly my answer, assuming they already know how to play Magic. If they don't, I would have said the Professor's video on how to play Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, the Professor's, or I suppose one of Day 9's. Day 9 has some good videos where he has some pretty popular personalities on, and it's very friendly intro to Magic-esque.
Very true.
And there's actually an extra optional bonus question. Oh, you know us, Rob. We're taking it. You don't really want to help out these hackers at all. What is the worst piece of plausible sounding Magic advice you can give them to get your revenge? Oh man.
Interesting. So this could go a couple of ways. One of my first inclinations is to suggest playing all your instants on your own turn, because you guarantee if you're maximizing your mana use or something like that. I don't know. You could probably spin it into a way that actually makes it sound like it's something you should be doing. So that's kind of where my head started.
I have something similar. I would probably advise that they always cast all their spells on their first main phase. That way they don't forget in their second main phase.
Yeah, no, that's a big one. The other thing I was thinking actually was to make sure you mulligan until you have like your whole hand is lands, because if you don't hit your lands, you can't cast anything. So the lands are far more important than the spells.
Oh my god. Or a classic is blocking to maintain a high life total. You want to stay as close to 20 life as possible, because when you hit 0, that's it. You're dead.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, just chump away all the time because you can't let your life total drop.
Oh my god! The other day, I will say, playing traditional, you don't always encounter like experienced Magic players. Sometimes it feels like people just go there, and it's also unranked. So the other day, somebody chumped my 4/4 with a 3/3. They were at 10.
Oh wow.
Oh man, it hurt. It hurt me. Like I don't think there's anything in Strixhaven that does the damage there, right? Like what do I need? Double study, right?
From 10? Yeah, or like crackle with power or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt bad. I felt a little sorry for my opponent, but you know, it's what it is.
Yeah, it does happen. All right, Sirkovitz is coming in here with asking the big questions. If we were potatoes, how would we like to be prepared and served?
Turn the whole one back around on us, huh?
Well, for me, it's curly fries, no doubt.
Ooh, interesting.
I'm a big curly fry fan.
With like Old Bay or
whatever fits your fancy. Old Bay fries are great, and if you don't live on the East Coast of the United States, you may not know what Old Bay is because it's actually not readily available in most places.
Is it not?
No, it's not. It's very much.
Oh my
East Coast
god!
thing.
What?
It may be now. It may be now.
Huh.
Like it may have propagated out enough now. It's been out for a very, very long time. But Old Bay is basically the seasoning. I don't really know how to describe how it tastes, but it's put on seafood a lot. It's also put on potatoes and fries a lot. It's just delicious. I really don't know how to. I don't know what goes into it, to be honest, off the top of my head. But it's absolutely delicious. But Old Bay fries are great. I also just like a plain curly fry. Those are good. But yeah, I just think they're more enjoyable than a regular straight French fry.
I'm wondering. Old Bay is probably like salt and paprika, right? Salt, pepper, and paprika.
Yeah, it's probably at least those things.
Something else. If I had to go with one, I would probably pick a loaded baked potato.
That was up there on my list as well.
Yeah, I don't eat baked potatoes super often, but when I do, I think the loaded aspect is good, and just the more stuff, the better. When I was a kid, I remember my dad, he showed me his very particular way of eating loaded baked potatoes, where he would like eat out the whole contents, and then once he had just the skin left, he would go get a bunch of cheese and bacon and like ranch. And he would put the ranch on, yeah, like cheese and bacon, toss it in the oven, let it come back out, put ranch on or sour cream or whatever.
Yeah, made potato skins.
Yeah, and then boom, you got potato skins. So it's great as is, and then it has infinite versatility even when you're almost done with it. So
absolutely,
that represents who I am.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it's something that is extremely adaptable to your palate and your taste buds, right? A loaded baked potato is whatever you want to make it.
Oh yeah.
There is kind of a right way to do it, but
let's avoid that one.
The Discord's going to be full of people asking us what the right way is.
Oh, you know the right way. The right way is your way.
There you go. Very diplomatic of you.
Batwheels asks, what is your favorite chain restaurant and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that I have any particular chain restaurants these days, like that is a genuine chain that I'm just like, oh, I love going there. I don't really eat fast food, though I say that, and most of the time people laugh at me because I very much love Five Guys, and it is very much fast food, but I don't, in my head, in my heart of hearts, I don't consider it fast food for some reason.
So that's your answer then, Five Guys.
So I guess it's Five Guys. My other answer would be literally any Chinese restaurant. I kind of feel like they're all close enough that like the stereotypical Chinese restaurant that's like Original Dragon #1 or, that kind of place. Because they're all basically the same restaurant.
They mostly have similar menus. I'm thinking like a place with that nice, like kind of angled down, fading sign that's been there for like 50 years. Like that's a good quality Chinese restaurant. I would probably go as far as like just straight up chain. I'd probably go Taco Bell. I think Taco Bell, first of all, it's not Mexican.
No.
I'm under no false pretenses that it is Mexican, but it kind of falls under the same paradigm as like Olive Garden or like Red Lobster or these places. Olive Garden is not Italian. Red Lobster is not really genuine seafood, and Taco Bell is not genuine Mexican, but they all make pretty good food.
Hey, look, I love endless shrimp. I'm there for Red Lobster's endless shrimp, dude. Can't keep me away. Oh yeah. That's fair though. Taco Bell. I read a study like probably a decade ago that said Taco Bell is the healthiest American fast food chain, which is kind of surprising to me because I always thought it was gross as far as like what the food looks like and stuff. It tastes great, but
Yeah, I suppose there's a lot of, I mean, beans and rice and lettuce and tomato. It's, I guess, compared to what's in some of the other stuff, it's just straight up made of better things. Also, the naked chicken chalupa, to swing away from the healthiness aspect. For those that don't know, I don't know if this is a regional thing or if even Taco Bell might not be in everyone's region. They took the worst part of a taco, the shell, obviously, and replaced it with, it's like, I don't know if it's fried, but it's breaded chicken, and you get it spicy or normal. And it is technically a chalupa, so they're replacing not a full hard shell, but like a soft shell. And they replace it with this chicken. I recommend you Google a picture if you're not familiar. It's fascinating. It's powerful. I get at least 5 every time they come back because it is the best fast food out there. And as a follow-up, Batwheels also asked, is Wawa really that great? I can't sleep on Wawa. Wawa is I want to say, like, it's pretty regional. I think
it's extremely regional.
But it probably sounds absurd, a place called Wawa, but it is fantastic. Really, any New Jersey Wawa is just going to be solid. It's a chain. It's a gas station. It's similar to Quick Check for those that are more familiar. I think that's a slightly wider spread version. But Wawa is just higher quality food. They have good breakfasts. They have good lunches. They even started doing good dinners now, too. And you can get any snack under the sun there. Plus, they have, like some medicines and other things that you need there too, some like housekeeping things. So it's just like you're all in one stop. I am never upset to go to Wawa for any meal of the day.
Yeah, it's at its core, Wawa is a convenience store, but it's really a convenience store on steroids. They do, as Ben mentioned, they do gas at pretty much every location, and the quality of the food they put out is exceptional when it comes to convenience stores.
Mm-hmm.
Ben mentioned that it's regional. It's extremely regional. I believe, and any listeners in the New Jersey or tri-state area who know better than me, please correct me in the Discord, but I'm fairly positive Wawa originally started in like the eastern Pennsylvania region, moved to New Jersey, and then jumped down to Florida somehow and is now slowly working its way up from Florida and down from Jersey to like meet along the East Coast.
Probably something like that, right?
But yeah, it's like, and Wawa's like some Native American word for goose. I don't know which language it's in, but it means goose. And yeah, it's a convenience store on steroids. Most people in the area will refer to it, they're like, oh, it's just 7-Eleven. It's like everybody who hears that will freak out that it's not anything like 7-Eleven.
It's not.
But they make food to order in a lot of different scenarios. Like you can basically order whatever you want there. They do, as Ben said, breakfast, lunch, dinner. You can get snacks, you can get drinks, their coffee's pretty good. All sorts of stuff. It's absolutely that great. And I have had one bad experience with Wawa in all of my 24 years.
Mm-hmm. That sounds about right.
I went to Wawa and I ordered a chicken salad sandwich. And you go up to like a touchscreen thing and you select all the things you want. And I ordered a chicken salad sandwich. I got like lettuce and spinach on it. I got banana peppers, honey mustard, and some other things. And I get the sandwich, and it was like a foot long or whatever. I get the sandwich, and I go home. I open the sandwich, and everything's on the sandwich except the chicken salad. And I was like, this is a joke, right?
You put too many ingredients, and they couldn't fit it all.
I was like, this is a joke. It's a chicken salad sandwich. How'd you miss the chicken salad?
That's pretty funny. Maybe they thought I don't know. I can't justify this one.
I just ate it. I didn't even go back. I just ate it, and I was like, whatever.
But I bet it was still pretty great.
It was fine, yeah.
So even at its worst, Wawa is still pretty top tier.
All right, so next up is a question from OD in the Discord. Recently, core sets have been focused on a specific planeswalker. Which planeswalker would you like to be the focus of the next core set? Each pick one. And what plane would you like the Phyrexians to invade next? 2 questions here from OD. So that first one, which planeswalker would you like to be the focus of the next core set?
This is a tough one. I kind of want to... I guess only picking one makes this tough. Man, because there's some of the older planeswalkers that I'd like to see developed a little bit more. Like, we don't know what Garruk is up to now.
Man, they do Garruk dirty. They do Garruk so dirty. He, disappeared for years, like, literal years in real world time. They just didn't mention him at all.
Yeah.
And then he showed up for one set, and then he disappeared again, and we don't know what's going on with him? Or is he still protecting... I don't know. It's just like, really?
I think maybe it was mentioned in some of the Eldraine lore what happened with him, but I wasn't really super following with the Eldraine lore. I heard it wasn't great. But anywho, I think if I had to pick one, it would be Renin 6.
Ooh. Yeah, Renin 6, what I know of Renin 6's backstory is really interesting.
Yeah, there's very little out there. You can Google it and read it in like under 2 minutes because they were only printed in one set. So what Renin 6 is it's two entities. One is a dryad, that's Ren, and 6 is their vessel, and it's like a tree folk-esque vessel that they're fused to. And apparently it's their 6th one, I think, something like that. So they are able to planeswalk, and I think is the deal with like when they planeswalk, they have to like graft a new tree folk vessel to themselves when they get to the new plane, or can they take the tree folk with them? I don't know. It's cool. It's really cool. This notion of like a planeswalking dryad, and I'd love to know more about it. But I think they're literally only featured on like 2 or 3 cards from MH1.
Yeah, even like flavor wise and such. Yeah. Yeah, Ren and 6 is a great pick here. I didn't quite go that deep, but that is a great pick. I would love to know more about them. And do we even know what plane Ren is from originally?
Who knows? They don't really look like any dryads that we're used to, I suppose.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I really do hope we get more on them, because that would be really cool. My first thought with this was Ajani. Ajani was like the first planeswalker I ever opened, like the original Ajani Goldmane from like M10. Yeah, so Ajani has a special place in my heart, and I'd like to see more on him. I wouldn't mind seeing more on like Koth or something like that. I don't even remember if Koth is still alive, but
there was the War of the Spark. Some random planeswalkers, like didn't Dak Faden get like incidentally killed in the trailer by some random Eternal? And people were mad about that, I think. I mean,
he's the greatest thief in the multiverse. You can't just kill him off.
Greatest thief. I guess not the best defensive planeswalker. Some of the fun uncommon ones would be nice. I guess when I say uncommon, the ones that we saw as uncommons in War of the Spark. Davriel, the Shadow Mage, right?
Oh, the Wanderer. For sure, the Wanderer.
Oh, the Wanderer. Absolutely. Yeah. Some people thought the Wanderer was Emrakul. And honestly, I saw some halfway convincing arguments that it could be. But the fact that it was a white card, I guess, kind of nixed that.
Hot nix. Yeah, I mean, who knows? That's kind of the draw of the Wanderer. I don't even think I necessarily want to know their backstory. I mean, I do, but I wouldn't be upset if they didn't give it to us, because it's like part of their whole shtick. But just to see them do more stuff, because they were really awesome in War of the Spark.
All we saw, Blade Banish, I think. This like rogue samurai-esque person comes in, slices up a bunch of Eternals, and then I think they show up briefly on Ikoria, but I don't think they were mentioned in the lore like novel or any of that stuff at all. But I think again they're featured. They're just like slicing up some giant monsters. They're just traveling around like a random interdimensional samurai. Awesome. I'm in for it. Yeah,
well, they have like a weird situation where they like can't keep themselves tethered to the plane they're on for very long.
That's right.
It's it's extremely
like an unstable spark.
Yeah. It's extremely difficult to keep them tethered to the plane that they're on, so they just randomly planeswalk away a lot of the time. Oh
my god, that sucks. What's like the worst thing you could be doing and then planeswalk away in the middle of it?
Using the bathroom, probably.
Anyway, what plane should the Phyrexians hit up next?
Oh man,
it's coming, right?
It is.
It's definitely coming.
It is. I kind of want to say Innistrad.
Ooh, hasn't Innistrad been through enough recently?
That's why I want it to be Innistrad. Could you imagine the Phyrexian Praetors and Emrakul duking it out?
Oh my god, that would be kind of cool. And like one of them gets warped in the same way that like the Angels did. That'd be sick.
Because like Emrakul's
still
would
do it.
I don't know, but Emrakul's still trapped in that moon, man. She's still doing her thing. She put herself there.
Yeah, that was concerning. I don't know. What if the Phyrexians witness Emrakul's ability to like distort living matter, and they're like, oh, like this is more complete than we thought we already were. This is good. Or do you think they take offense to it? Like, oh no, it's corrupting our completion. I could see a genuine, in fact, now that I say it out loud, I think they'd be
pissed.
But a bit of a disagreement there. The Phyrexians, they work pretty hard to get themselves all metallic and whatnot. They probably don't want people on doing that, right?
Yeah, I mean, Emrakul literally just corrupts things, so I don't know. That would be pretty interesting. I agree, though, Innistrad has been through quite a bit, and by that same token, probably not Zendikar. I'd probably say keep the Phyrexians away from Zendikar. I think they've been through enough as well.
Yeah, I have a theory.
Go for it.
And it's one based in reality because of I think it was the Icor Wellspring.
Yeah.
I think they're coming for Ixalan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is my top vote on where we'll see them next, or at the very least, we need an explanation as to how they got there or why we saw that card, because if it's not, if that wasn't intended to be a chronological plant and say like, oh, they're going to show up here next, because technically that was also already incorrect because we got Vorin Klex on Kaldheim, but like maybe they're setting up shop, like Ixalan's their new homeworld while they're planning their next, you know, bout of war across the multiverse for completion. Who knows? Maybe they had something to do with Azor and the I can't remember the name of the object, but the sun thing.
The immortal sun, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all that stuff's great, but I think the bottom line, robot dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Next question.
They should have saved the Mecha Godzilla skin for robot dinosaurs, but
yeah, they went for that one a little too early. I don't know. I think it could happen. Maybe we'll just get more Godzilla stuff.
So next up is a question from Hululu here. Asks, what are the biggest Magic level ups, limited or constructed, that you've had over the years?
Good question. I think the first initial thought is all the things that we mentioned earlier, the things that we would tell the hackers. Not that.
Yeah, the exact opposite of those things.
Yeah, all those things definitely count. As far as gameplay, I wouldn't say that I've stagnated very much recently. I think my drafting has leveled up a little bit. Sometimes I still find myself falling into old traps where I'm like, oh, I gotta take the rare. Like, that looks like a fun rare. I think one of my biggest level ups, honestly, is taking the cards that make the most impact rather than the cards that seem the flashiest. And this isn't like a huge, I don't know, step to climb. I think it was just more of a gradual process. But it personally felt like a pretty big level up, even in this set, when I started taking combat professors over whatever nonsense rare was in the set. So I think I would call that a pretty good level up on my part. And it's a tough one because half of the reason that limited is fun is because you get to play with these rare cards, and playing with rares and mythics and flashy things that you open is fun. It's fun to be able to say, look, I got lucky and now I get to do something cool with it. And this won't happen to me all the time, but it happened this time and it was a fun experience. Sometimes, though, that's not the right thing to do. And that was hard for me to realize. This is, I think, helped me get more consistent drafts. And I think it's kind of made a less visible impact on like my overall win rate and my overall enjoyment now that I've started kind of taking this to heart. Because, you know, you'll lose a bunch of games after you kind of train wreck the draft and just said, oh, my deck wasn't very good. But then it's hard to go back and interrogate why. I think especially now with 17 lands data, it's pretty easy to go back and interrogate why. And I think the more we dig into this data and just see what we can really do with it, I think we're all going to start leveling up in ways that we didn't really anticipate. How about you?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think my first, like the go-to answer to this question for me is spend all your mana efficiently. That was the biggest level up I had when I first started listening to limited resources back in like high school. And it was like, I don't know why, but it was very eye-opening to me to be like, oh yeah, I should be spending all my resources that are available. And
Yeah.
that, I mean, that kind of translates a little bit to, you know, utilizing life points in the best way you can, which goes back to what we were talking about earlier with chump blocking and things. That's also a resource you can leverage to get ahead. You know, as long as your life total is not at 0, you're still in the game. So, and you can actually see that. I posted a game in the Discord a couple days ago where I was playing Theros Beyond Death and I got down to 1 life against the red-white deck and managed to win the game. So, you know, it can happen. So that's my biggest level up. Mana efficiency is my biggest level up as far as actual gameplay goes. But yeah, drafting a signal reading, I think, has been my biggest level up. Like actually learning to recognize which cards are worth taking early, so you notice when they're in the pack still, when they get past you, has been big. Because I think for a while my drafting has been a lot worse than my gameplay, and I think that's still the case. Maybe not a lot worse now. I think they're starting to come close to each other, but in recent months I would like to say that my drafting has leveled up faster than my gameplay has. So there are a lot of different lessons, I think, to be learned in the actual draft portion. But that's one of them. And then that's also kind of why I wanted to start a series on the YouTube channel with going back over my drafts and like going through the 17 lands data and just saying like, hey, I don't know why I made that pick. I probably should have picked this card, and, you know, talk about my decisions during the draft, because that's a great way to actually like find your own inconsistencies, find the ways that you maybe missed the beat while you were drafting, and kind of keep those things in mind for when you actually get into your next draft.
I want to mention one other small one that I've had more recently. This is more of a, I guess, like a step level up than a gradual one, like kind of like we mentioned. But casting instant speed spells on your turn when appropriate. I think if you, it's kind of like a step series, right? Step level 1 is cast everything on your turn, tap out, pass the turn. Step 2 is, you can leave up instant speed stuff like removal spells and creatures with flash until your opponent's turn. And then the third level above that is, okay, it's not always best to leave up spells like this because in Limited, they've been printing a lot of good answers. Sometimes counter spells are played in the format, not so much this format, although there are some negate effects that see play. There's a lot of things that give hexproof or little temporary buffs or indestructible or things like that, combat tricks that can be left up super easily, and you just get so punished if it happens on your opponent's turn mid-combat, right? So if you've got that kill spell and your opponent is tapped out, even if it's an instant, yeah, sure, maybe they'll try to pump it mid-combat, but are you willing to risk the fact that they might have, I don't know, an indestructible spell in their hand or a hexproof spell in their hand? Sometimes it's just best to take the clean 1-for-1 and not get too fancy, especially if you're behind. So that was a personal level up that I had probably within the last year or two, probably within the last year, I'd say even, that I found is kind of got me to that next level. Here is a fun question from Batwheels. You're on a deserted island, but you have access to one magic spell based on a magic card. What is it? So the whole idea of you as a magic player, you're like a planeswalker, quote unquote, right? And you're summoning spells from all over the place. So I'm going to interpret this as you get to cast one magic card and it happens in real life, right?
Yeah, so my pedantic mind always goes to, wait, what are my assumptions here? Because A, if you're a planeswalker, you're just planeswalking away from the island, doesn't matter what spell you're casting. So can't exactly be a planeswalker. You got to be trapped there in some capacity. But there are characters in Magic that are not planeswalkers that use magic spells and such, so that's okay. Mm-hmm. My next question is, when we cast the spell, are we getting an effect that is the best translated effect from the card itself into real life in whatever way that works? Or are we just taking the name of the card and using that as something that, whatever we can imagine that spell would do?
Let's say either. I mean, or like dealer's choice. We can pick.
Sure. So for me, if I'm just like, oh, that spell sounds like it would help me out a lot in this situation, I would just take teleport because that's a spell.
Yeah. Okay.
From Legacies, I think, and that would do it. Like it would just get you off the island.
I think you're thinking a little too small here. I'm gonna go omniscience, and then I assume I can just like kind of levitate up into the air. Now,
omniscience is just that you know everything. It doesn't give you random magical powers.
But what if it gives you? That's true. It doesn't draw cards. Omniscience and 0 cards in hand is not a good combination. Maybe I should have thought a little more about this one then. I figured omniscience would just get you everything you need, right? If anything, I would probably want, if not a card that granted me some sort of like stupendously awesome powers. What's the one? Is it Transcendent Avatar?
Yeah. That is a card.
What I'm thinking of. The level up white
Yes.
mythic from old Zendikar.
Yes.
That, I think it starts off as like a little creature and then it levels up into this like flying, lifelink, indestructible, like super cool beater. If I could be a magic card, I'd probably do that because it'd be pretty neat to say meditate on an island for a few days and then just kind of start hovering up into the air and then I could just fly back to shore, like glowing eyes and stuff. If I needed, I don't know, isn't there a ghost ship too? Isn't that an old card?
There
like
is.
Blue
There are
gets
a
it
lot of
flying?
ways to get off an island with magic cards. If you could be a magic card, you could just pick literally any card that has flying. You'd be fine.
Yeah.
There are plenty of enchantments that give flying, so you could just take one of those.
Any card with Island Walk would probably let you walk on water, I guess, but at least be really good at swimming.
Yeah.
I think I might go, personally, I think it'd be really cool. I think it'd be a cool superpower to be able to surf anywhere. That's me coming from my surfer's background. It's kind of like longboarding anywhere, except you could just go over stuff that you couldn't go over on a longboard. So I would probably want to take an elemental of some kind. Maybe like a Shore Crasher elemental or Brine elemental or one of those. It'd be pretty cool to have an elemental wave that you could summon. Also, I don't know, for those that have seen Ponyo, the father from Ponyo, it's a great Ghibli movie. He's able to kind of grab a handful of water and turn it into a bunch of little elementals that turn into waves. That'd be a pretty cool thing to do. So I might go with a water elemental if I'm blocked from omnisciencing or turning into a flying transcendent master of space and time or whatever.
Well, I wasn't trying to shut down omniscience. Like, you could totally get that. It would probably tell, like, if you had omniscience, I'm sure you could figure out a way off the island. It just wouldn't let you levitate. Like, you wouldn't just immediately get the ability to fly away with omniscience.
Oh, here's an idea. Starve extinction. And that way you just blow up everything around you and then everything becomes like land. You know?
Oh, you're right. I'll just take all his dust and we can just be done.
Oh, or boil. Destroys all islands, which I assume would just boil off the ocean. You can just walk back to shore.
Yeah, that's fair. That's kind of a flavor fail, you know? Like, boil destroys islands, but the islands themselves aren't the water.
Oh, uh-oh.
Islands are land masses.
All right. Call up Richard. We have some words for him.
All right. With that, we're going to go on to our first and only audio question. Thanks, Wolverine, for submitting an audio question. Really excited to try this out on the show. Maybe we can do more of this for like our general listener question of the week or something. But yeah, here you go. This is Wolverine, and we'll be back afterwards to answer the question.
Hey, fellas. Wolverine here, listening from Colorado. I have a question about mental magic. Now, I was an athlete before I started playing Magic, and conventional wisdom in sports is when you're in a slump is to just keep going, keep swinging, keep shooting, those sorts of things. Well, I feel like the conventional wisdom in Magic is when you're in a slump is to take a break, step away from the game for a little bit. Well, I have a hard time doing that. So if I fired off 3 or 4 drafts in a row that have gone poorly, my inclination is to just go ahead and fire up another one that I'll get out of this slump eventually. How do you guys balance taking a break from the game or firing up another one to try to overcome a slump or, a bad time that you might be having? So you guys are doing a great job. Keep up the good work and looking forward to the next year and many years to come. Thanks.
All right. So what are your thoughts? That was a great question, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Thanks for that. And this is a tough one. As someone else who has a bit of sports background, I know what you're talking about. That drive to succeed, that kind of push from whatever external figures, or honestly even internal. I think it might hinge on the fact that one is a physical activity and the other is more a mental activity. And that's not a strict border. For example, if you are playing Magic the Gathering for 7 hours and forget to eat, you're going to feel pretty physically bad, right? So I think the bulk of the effort, though, is mental burnout that tends to affect Magic players more. Let's focus on that aspect at least. And then the physical burnout that tends to affect sports players more. And whereas sports muscles can actually be trained by, I guess what they say, you build muscle by creating slight tears in your muscle and then those rebuild even stronger, right? I don't know if the brain works in quite the same way. I think brains can be pushed a little too much and they can kind of get worn down. And I think they need more time to recover than, say, muscles. I don't know. I honestly think there's some unhealthy culture in the sports sector here, too, to deal with. But look, I'll save that for a different podcast, people that are more informed about it. What do you think?
Yeah, so I also have a bit of a sports background. I played hockey for 11 years, and I tend to agree. I think it's a lot easier in physical sports to just keep at it and keep at it and keep at it. And sometimes it's because it's a technique you're trying to develop that you can't quite get. Like in hockey, it might be that your slap shot's just not getting there. You can't quite make goals with it. So you have to work on your timing or your power or your aim or something like that. And that takes repetition. It takes doing it over and over and over again to get down to the bottom of it. You can't really think your way through that. I don't agree that there isn't a mental aspect to, and you didn't make this claim, but there's definitely a mental aspect of physical sports as well.
Yeah.
That involves that gets involved with the performance in physical sports. But I think it's a lot harder to tell yourself in the moment when you're at the table playing Magic or you're on your computer playing Magic or your phone or whatever it is. It's a lot harder in the moment when you're on a losing streak to tell yourself it's just like a phase, or maybe I made some mistakes that I can adapt to. And I think part of the sports side of things is you have a coach telling you little tweaks here and there. You have somebody who's like, hey, if you release that shot half a second earlier, you're probably going to be on target. So work on, releasing a little bit earlier. Things like that. You get tips from somebody. It's like an actor getting input from a director, right? Like you have somebody who's helping you on a regular basis. Typically, especially through the pandemic and things like that, when you're playing Magic, you're by yourself. And it's much easier to tell yourself lies or even false, lies and
That's true, yeah.
Even
you can trick yourself.
You can trick yourself very easily. And I think that's probably the biggest problem with that. That's kind of why tilt is a thing. Like, it's very easy to just get super frustrated because
Like a feedback loop.
it's a feedback loop. Yeah, you don't really see the mistakes you're making most of the time. You only see your end result, and most people who are finding themselves in a situation where they're tilting like that aren't taking the time to go back and be their own coach and look at the data on 17 lands and say, oh, I really shouldn't have made this pick in this draft, or wow, that turn was a pivotal point and I made the wrong decision. Because those are the things that help you get better. And if you're not taking that time, which is still taking time off, you aren't going to see that. And unless you have a coach watching you play every game. But that's kind of why we started this podcast as well, because Ben and I constantly send stuff to each other like, hey, look at this draft, or check out this game, or, whatever. And figured we could get more input from other people and give other people more input as well. So
next up, we've got a question from Andy, who asks, where's somewhere in the world you'd like to visit the most?
This is a tough question for me because my wife and I both really like to travel, so we both have a bit of a bucket list for locations we'd like to go to. But my bucket list is very amorphous. There are a bunch of items on it, but I have no idea what the order is. New Zealand is definitely up there. It's one of my top tier picks for a place that I'd like to visit. You just get so much beautiful landscape, great towns and vistas and things like that, and so that's up there. I'd like to go to the UK and Ireland at some point, and I think that would be a lot of fun. Iceland, the black sand beaches on Iceland are phenomenal. I'd really love to go there. And I do a lot of amateur photography, so a lot of these decisions are motivated by photography. I'd also really love to go to Spain. Actually, my wife and I were just talking about entertaining the idea of spending like 6 months in Spain or something. Just like move there briefly.
That'd be sick.
And I work remotely, so it'd be very easy for me.
Yeah,
to do that. I shouldn't say very easy. I do have the time zones to deal with. But Spain's up there. Brazil's up there, kind of, because I have a lot of family in Brazil. But it's also a very dangerous place to be right now. And the government's not super stable, so it's not that high on my list at the moment. Yeah. There are also a lot of places in the continental U.S. and even non-continental U.S. I'd really love to go to Hawaii. I'd love to see the Grand Canyon. Basically, the entire national park system I'd love to see. Yeah, there are a lot of places. South Germany. I've been to North Germany, and I'm going there in about a month as well, but I've never been to South Germany. Really like to see that. Austria is supposed to be beautiful. Prague's supposed to be beautiful. There are a lot of places I want to go to.
Yeah, you just fired off a list. I was struggling to think of like one or two places, but I kind of have. I've seen a good chunk of the U.S. My family likes going on, I guess I call them nature trips. So I have seen a good chunk of the U.S. Park system, although there's a few that I'm missing, a few of the ones that are out west and towards the south. But I think, you know what? I'm going to cop out. I want to go where the listeners are. I'd like to meet some of these people, It'd be cool to show up in a town and be like, hey, let's go get dinner, some people that we know from Discord or things like that. So if you got a cool town, let us know. Maybe Zach and I can fly out. I mean, I'm free over the summer. I'll do some stuff. But I think other places, I've always wanted to see Tibet. I think it'd be a pretty cool place. It's always seemed interesting. I also would want to go when it's cold because I love the cold, and I think that'd be kind of cool. Some other general places, I would say this feels a little cop-outy, but Vegas, specifically GP Vegas. I think that is a destination that I would love to see because I can only imagine what kind of atmosphere it is when a bunch of Magic the Gathering players go from playing Magic the Gathering all day to just partying. I want to be there. I want to do shots with some of the greats. I'm in for that.
That's awesome. Hopefully we'll get another GP Vegas. I mean, the GP scene is very up in question marks right now, especially with the state of pro play and everything. So hopefully GPs come back and we get to see that. That would be great. Mm-hmm. Our next question here comes from Gus WF. Favorite MTG ship pair?
Ooh, this is tough. Now, Zach and I have kept up on lore. Honestly, there's not too many prominent couples currently in the lore.
It's probably Sky Sovereign and Smuggler's Copter as my favorite ship pair.
Oh my god.
No,
we regret to inform you that after a year, the podcast has come to an end.
I'm just kidding. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you, but I had to get that joke in before you started giving serious answers.
It was worth it. I think Kino Centiro of Melodus, that's a classic one, because we saw them first on, what was it, Guardians of Melitus, I think, which was just some trashy common from a core set or Magic Origins or something like that. And then we later found out that they're actually two cool dudes on their own card. It's some group hugs card, I think. So that's a fun one. I also want to shout out Regna the Redeemer and Krav the Unredeemed from, was it Battle Bond?
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
Yeah. They're another kind of set of figures that I'd love to get more lore on someday. I guess they're kind of stuck on what's that plane called? Kyla? Is it Kylum?
Yeah, Kylum. That's the one where Will and Rowan are from, or not from, but at.
They hung out there, yeah. So Regna and Krav, Regna being an angel, Krav being a demon. Very curious to figure out how that happened. That's awesome lore. For those that don't know the cards, they have partner, so which is kind of like a cool legendary mechanic. You can do stuff with it in Commander. I'd love to know what happened there. They're only mentioned on a handful of cards, but they seem like cool characters. And I suppose finally, honestly, from the most recent lore type ones, gotta go Jason Vraska.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a very good one. Especially given their like background and everything, and like they literally needed their minds to get wiped for that to ever happen. So
yeah,
that was pretty cool. I had Jace and Lily in the back of my head because they had like a weird relationship where she kind of just took a lot of advantage of him until he was like, wait, what? And then he had his mind wiped and he ended up with Vraska for a little bit and, that whole thing. But that was not a healthy relationship, but I thought it was a funny one from a lore perspective. Like
it is pretty funny.
The way that all worked out. I'm going to pour one out for Chandra and Nissa though. Like, classic WotC doing the WotC thing. But I mean, that was kind of cool. I actually liked the tension they brought into the story with pseudo exploring that relationship before they just retcon the whole thing.
Destroyed everything.
that was pretty cool, and you could like see little bits of it every now and then, so I liked the way that was kind of worked through. I feel like they don't actually spend much, if any, time on inter-character relationships though, like in a romantic sense. There's very little of that actually spoken about in the lore. Sometimes
it's illustrated through cards effectively, which I think is cool. Right. I'd like to see more of that. I think it's Halana and Elena, the trappers.
I was about to mention them because I was surprised you didn't.
Yeah. They are mentioned all throughout, I want to say the old Innistrad and then the new Innistrad, and then in Commander Legends we finally got printed versions of them. I'm sad they kind of suck, but because otherwise I love Innistrad and the red-green, which I don't have a straight-up red-green Commander deck. I'd love to have made them, but the cards just aren't that good. So maybe we'll get a Legend when we go back to Innistrad in the fall. Maybe we'll get something cool with both of them.
Yeah, my official answer to this question, by the way, is O'Cown and Zinder split. I don't know if they're like an actual like couple as far as a romantic sense is concerned, or if they're just friends or what, but I love their relationship, so.
It's a ship pair. We'll call it that. Next up, question from Andy. What's your opinion on the ever-controversial Secret Lair? Any thoughts on one you'd like to see / suggest? Oh, man. Time to unscrew this disgusting can of worms. I don't know where to begin.
Well, I guess we know your opinions on Secret Lairs already, given your preface there, but...
Well, it's rough. It's tough. It's weird. You start. I need to think.
Yeah, I guess the blanket answer is I don't like them. I don't think that's a fair answer because there's a lot of nuance that goes into the actual reasoning for that. I don't particularly like the way they handled some of the original ones with bringing in the Walking Dead characters as actual cards that aren't just skins. I like the way they handled Godzilla as a skin on top of a card that it's not like they were introducing Godzilla into the actual multiverse, and they kind of did that with The Walking Dead, and it just feels wrong. I'm kind of surprised they did, well, it's probably a licensing issue, but I was kind of surprised they didn't do that with Strixhaven with like Harry Potter characters and stuff as like a skin on top. But I also, my biggest complaint with the Secret Lairs is twofold. It's that they're taking some business away from LGSs. I think they should give Secret Lairs to LGSs to sell, not sell them themselves.
Right.
And I don't really like giving WotC money right now. Like it's actually sad because it keeps me from drafting a lot of the times. I don't want to put money on Arena because I'm not happy with the way they've handled the platform. And given that they're making extremely record-breaking profit levels, and then they're pulling stunts like not really developing the client at all, they're pulling money away from the pro circuit. It's like they're just backing out on promises they make. I have no confidence in the company. I love the game, but I have no confidence in the company running the game. and I don't really want to give them more money. So the fact that it's a primary market, that it's like I'm just buying something directly from Wizards. Now, I do occasionally buy cards. Ben has mentioned a couple times that we bought a box, like we split a box of Modern Horizons 2, but most of the time I buy singles from LGSs and stuff. Mm-hmm. But again, and it keeps me from drafting. When I run out of stuff on Arena, I grab an old standard deck that I probably don't have the wild cards to update, and I jam that until I have the gold to run another draft. I just don't want to put money into the platform. So that's my biggest problem with them.
Mm-hmm. I think there's some upsides and some downsides to Secret Lair. I'll start with the upsides. Some of the art is fantastic. Giving artist series, these spotlights, awesome. Love it. I wish there was a better way to do it. This is what we've got. It's really cool that they get to print these different versions of things and honestly have some pretty creative approaches. Some of the newer ones have been hits or misses, but some of these are genuinely really cool. I guess another upside is that sometimes they are able to print expensive cards at to bring the price down, right? We saw some cases of this, some cases where I guess this bullet point kind of falls in the middle, right? Some cases where the cards were not worth the price of the Secret Lair bundle. However, there are some where the cards are worth the price of the Secret Lair bundle. So this can go either way. If you need the cards and are going to play them, sure, get them. But what I don't like about that is that maybe there's only one or two in the pack, in the drop, so to speak, that you want. You just want to wait and buy those as singles.
I would much rather they give you here's the Secret Lair drop. It's these 5 cards. But when you order it, you can say, I only want 4 of this card, none of the others, or I like maybe every drop is 4 cards, and you can pick some combination of 4 to get, and maybe that affects the price of the drop, but at least you get the cards you actually want. Because like we were talking about them recently with the big super drop they did for the summer, and one of them has Spell Queller in it, and I run Spirits in Modern, and I would love to get that version of Spell Queller. It's a beautiful card, but I am probably just going to wait until I can buy them as singles because I don't want to buy 4 copies of the Secret Lair.
Yeah, it's a confused product. Sometimes I'm not entirely sure if they're trying to, like, who are they selling this to? Who is buying the bulk of these? I have purchased one Secret Lair. I bought Secret Lair Thalia because I saw this as a really kind of fun and simple way to get 4 Thalias for when I, eventually play them in Modern. And it was worth the price. The arts were great. The foiling was okay. I don't actually think they're bent that much, but I have had them pretty well stored since. And it was worth it for that moment. The things that they printed since then, there have been some Secret Lairs that have just been so forgettable. And I like these alternate printings, these alternate arts, these foiling things, these whatevers, when they're available. And I think now starting to move into the negative notes, I don't like the culture of this method of selling. It's almost this FOMO, the whole like get it now before it's gone. It's almost a predatory business practice where it's pressuring people like, if you don't buy this now, God knows what the prices of this card is going to be in 30 years. So if you like it, you better give it, you better pay now. And it just feels kind of gross. It's not something I want to partake in.
And that's another reason why the Walking Dead ones felt so bad, because those were brand new cards that you could only get through the Secret Lair. At least the other ones are reprints of cards. So if you miss out, maybe you missed out on the art. But like, it's not like you can't get that card through other means. Mm-hmm. But the Walking Dead ones were genuinely brand new cards that were legal in actual formats, and you could only get them through Secret Lair drop.
Right. So I've made, I guess, these 3-ish bullet points. And on a relative scale, I would put the positive at a 1, the medium at a 0, the negative at a -1. And now to go down to like -20 on the relative scale, the Walking Dead ones. I absolutely cannot stand that. Disgusting. I hate it. There are canon people in the Magic universe now whose names are like Phil or what are their names? Like
Rick.
Like, no, if you're listening, your name's Rick. It's a great name. No offense, but like this guy from the TV show, Rick. Or like, I don't know, Pithing Needle. I named Rick. Like, come on. Like, what's going on here? I am all for these kind of alternate universe tie-in cards. I think the way they did Godzilla was perfect. And honestly, if they want to make this type of thing for people, there is an audience for it, and it can be cool. I think they're doing, Stranger Things next?
Yep.
There might be some cool stuff in there. However, when they make those mechanically unique, they're starting to touch on some flavor that I don't like. They're starting to touch on some business practices that I, again, don't like. Because what happens when one of these cards becomes a legacy staple? And then everybody needs 15 copies of Glenn for their...
Well, I mean, that's kind of what happened.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think any of them see too much play anymore. But, I don't know, just sitting down at a Commander game, just like casually, and you got like, oh, you got an Animar. Oh, you've got like a fella, and then, oh, you got a... Oh, what's that? Like a gun-toting zombie killer? I don't know. If you're into it, it's cool. I'm not the biggest Walking Dead fan in the world, but I don't know. There's got to be some kind of IP integrity, right?
Yeah, that's the problem for me too. It's just, you know, you hear and I've played D&D for quite a while, and I DM and stuff, so you hear a lot as a joke in the D&D community, like, you're breaking my immersion, or even in like video games or movies or something. That's a real thing that people are concerned about, is breaking the audience's immersion. You want to make them feel like they belong to the world that you're building, make them feel like they have some sort of stakes in it, that they belong there. And we've all for decades felt that about Magic. And then suddenly they're just like, hey, Walking Dead is now part of Magic. And you're like, whoa, hold up. Like, you just completely broke my immersion. And especially from an inter-game perspective, if, like you said, I'm playing like Zedgeru and I'm like, yeah, Pithing Needle or, you know, Scalding Tarn, and then they're just like, Glenn, Rick, here are these like zombie killers. It's like, okay, really? Am I even playing Magic anymore?
Yeah, like for the record, I think it's totally fine if these are not mechanically unique. If they printed right now, if they just released, what was it, like 5 cards that were mechanically identical to the ones that they printed in the Secret Lair of Walking Dead, I would find that as a good course of action. I think that's pretty fine. And it sounds like in the future they're going to do the same thing, and then a little while later print the Magic versions of the cards that they print.
Except not for the Walking Dead ones.
Yeah, except not for those, which I don't get. Maybe they'll do it someday. Who knows? But I think there's a way to do this better. And they're not. I'm not going to claim that I know what it is. I don't know exactly how to do it or how to get there. But what they're doing right now is making people kind of unhappy, and that's, you know, probably something you want to avoid in your game. That's, you know, supposed to make people happy overall.
All right, our next question here is actually for Ben more than myself, but I'll answer it as well. Now that you brought us Smash Bros, and if you didn't listen to last week's episode, we talked a little bit about Smash Bros in the sign-off. Who is your main?
Oh boy. Okay, so first of all, I should preface this by saying I'm not like an OG Melee player or anything. I am not. I miss Tex, if you know. Like I do have fun playing it though, and I would consider myself fairly decent. I put myself at like a 6, maybe on a good day a 7. But I main Robin in Smash 4 and Smash Ultimate. I love Robin. I'm a dirty Fire Emblem player. Get it all out in the Discord. You know, rip me a new one. I don't care. In previous Smash, I had mained Link, and although he got a bit of a nerf in Smash Ultimate, I don't know, the new bombs I'm just not really digging. But if I want to genuinely win a game, I'll pick up Robin. I love the Magic Boys, Ness and Lucas. I am a fan of some of the dorkier, dirtily characters. I'm just playing for fun with friends. I'll pick up Ganon or DDD or something of that, you know, genre. But honestly, a lot of the friends that I play Smash with, we know each other's mains so well, and we've kind of gotten so used to each other that after we've kind of, you know, caught up and we've played our mains a little bit, we'll just main random and just have a good time seeing what we get and messing around.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't have a very long relationship with Smash. I played Melee like a little bit when I was a kid, and then I think Brawl was like the only one that I've actually put any hours into. So, or was Brawl the one that also was available for the 3DS?
Oh, 3DS was Smash 4, I think.
Okay, so I played a little bit of that one too, but I think I actually was a fan of Robin as well. I liked Robin a lot, as I didn't know anything about the character because I've never played Fire Emblem, but just the playstyle I liked. I was also a big Sonic fan in Smash specifically. Like I played Sonic a lot as well, and then I think in Brawl I mained Toon Link.
Yeah, I tend to stick with sword fighters. Something about them just appealing, the brawlers and other stuff. Actually, that reminds me, me Gunner. I really just like me Gunner with some very specific combinations. I had to toss that one in there. And anyway, Hululu has a follow-up question. What are our favorite games outside of Magic? What games?
Yeah, I don't think we've actually talked about this too much on the show.
Besides Yahtzee.
Well, obviously, that's the only game that actually exists outside of Magic. But so I have, and actually Ben can kind of to a somewhat lesser extent, relate to this. I've always been a very big fan of MMOs. Grew up playing World of Warcraft. Was always a big fan of that. I played RuneScape before that. Always been a big fan of MMOs. Always been a big fan of strategy games. My very, very first video game I ever played was StarCraft, like the original StarCraft. And I played that forever. Like, it was one of my favorite games for a very long time. So I like a lot of strategy games, RTSs. Civ is great. I'm a big fan of any other kinds of card games. I played Hearthstone for a little while. I played Runeterra, like I mentioned. I've been kind of trying to get into the like PvE style card games like Slay the Spire and Rogue Book and things like that. I haven't actually played any of them yet, but played Runeterra's PvE mode, which is also fantastic. So I want to get into more of those. I'm a big fan of RPGs, The Witcher, Borderlands, things like that. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it.
As for me, I do play, not Yahtzee, but I do play some, I guess I'd call them like interpersonal party-esque games. If we're talking non-video games, that is. Secret Hitler is a fantastic one. Exploding Kittens. Those are two of my go-tos with the friend groups that I tend to do that kind of thing with. As for video games, Zelda is kind of my long-time love. I can't wait for Breath of the Wild 2. And even when Breath of the Wild 2 comes out, I'm probably still going to be playing Breath of the Wild 1. I've got a master mode save file that I've put God knows how many hours into. I'm kind of afraid to check. As for, I guess, like more PC-esque games, Portal, Half-Life, some of the classics from Valve are great. I'll dabble with PvP shooters every once in a while. Star Wars Battlefront 2 is probably the game that I have put the most time into of any video game. And I'm talking like the old one, not the new EA one. Like the OG Battlefront 2, I was a menace on those servers as a child. Back then, when I was like little, I didn't really have any consoles. I just kind of had my PC. And I remember I bought Star Wars Battlefront 2 at like the middle school book fair for $20. It was like a new release. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing in the world. And for probably 5 or 6 years, I didn't have a console. I remember I bought my first console for myself in high school. So I just played Star Wars Battlefront 2 for like, with that point, around a third of my life at that age. So I was good at Star Wars Battlefront 2. I still play it today every once in a while just for a throwback. Still fun. But I'll also play, as for some of the newer shooters, I played Overwatch for a bit. Overwatch is pretty fun. Apex, PUBG, some of those other shooters that it really depends on if you can get a group together for. When I can get a group together, I like those. Otherwise, I kind of like the more personal, puzzly, first-person shooter explorer type things. Firewatch was fantastic. But honestly, if you had to sum up my full play style, I'd say somewhere between Half-Life and Portal.
Yeah, and then as I alluded to, Ben also had a stint with MMOs in Star Wars: The Old Republic. The two of us were very heavily involved in that game. Some of our server bests for different things, and spent
guild leaders,
countless hours on that game too.
Yeah. Oh man, I came across some old files from that game, screenshots that I'd taken, videos that I'd screen capped, and man, we had some pretty dope stuff going on in that game.
We actually did an AP stats project in high school all around Star Wars: The Old Republic.
Oh, I forgot about that. Circumvents, hit us up. We can talk stats about a very different game.
I think we still have those videos on YouTube too, by the way.
Oh, we got to pull those up sometime. Speaking of Circumvents, he's got a last question here. He says, but seriously, you've been content creators for a year, give or take, and depending on which one of us is counting, I don't know. I think we finally nailed it down. This has been a year. How did it impact our gameplay? Do we learn more from creating content and are able to become better players in result, or are we spending so much of our time thinking about the content that our gameplay suffers? Good question. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question, and I had to think about this one a little bit ahead of time to really come up with an answer and not just babble here. But
yeah,
I'll start by saying it definitely did impact my gameplay. Mm-hmm. When we first started playing, when we first started doing the show, my average win rate was somewhere on, like I said, on average, hovering somewhere around like 59-60%. Occasionally a bit higher, occasionally a bit lower, but that's about where it hovered. And since the show started, it's steadily dropped to the point where it's at like hovering around 50% now. And I don't know if that's because I have been putting more time into thinking about the content, because I don't know that that's necessarily true. It might just be that other life stuff has also happened, confounding variables and everything. Some other stuff has popped up, and it was a bad year mentally and all that kind of stuff, that my game has suffered from that aspect of it. might be that I got a little bit more burned out because we are constant, like we can't really take a break.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that we can't. I mean, that sounds like we're, slaves to ourselves or something.
If we ever needed to, we would.
Right. We really try our best not to. And we did. I mean, we did just last week, but we made up for it. Like we try our best not to miss a week because, we have listeners like you who want to hear what we have to say or want to just, maybe we're helping you get through your week or something like that. I mean, any little reason makes us want to keep doing it and not skip a week. But I would say that my game has definitely suffered. I just don't know if it's really related to time spent thinking about the content.
Yeah, I did do some thinking on my end for this question too. I've definitely been playing more Magic. I think Arena is part of that. I don't know if I'm playing as much Magic as I could because it has been a pandemic and it's been like a rough year being a first-year teacher and all that good stuff. I think it's improved my gameplay in some ways because I've focused a little bit more on the things that we'd want to talk about on the show. I focused on archetypes more. I focused on theory more, especially trying to incorporate vector theory into my own gameplay, which I've actually found to be working. So more on that in an upcoming article. But I think I've also kind of I've lost something too in that. I've lost the I don't want to say the pure fun of it anymore. It's not like I feel pressured to succeed or something. I'm still doing this because I have fun playing the game, right? But if I'm not consistently trophying, or if I'm not, reading the signals correctly, if I'm not, I think I might be pushing myself harder sometimes in that regard to perform almost, not for myself or anybody else necessarily, but just kind of in general to kind of be on top of things. This is kind of a weird answer. It made sense in my head, but I think because I've become more focused on gameplay, I guess you could say it's improved myself in some areas and also hurt me in other areas.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. One thing that I just was thinking of while you were talking that I didn't realize until it just started clicking in my head was there was actually something that there is one area very specifically that the podcast has helped me with, and that is prior to doing the show, I used to be nervous going into the beginning of every new format. Every single time I was nervous because I don't know the format, and I was like, oh, I just got used to this last one. Now I don't know the new one, and it's going to take me weeks of doing poorly to figure out what I'm doing. I don't feel that way anymore. We prep pretty heavily for the format breakdowns, and by then I'm ready to get in and jam some games. So, that's a big bonus.
I'll share one thing that I think has specifically hurt me, and I'm curious to see if this has happened to you too. Since doing the show, I don't remember card names as much.
Oh, so true. I don't know if that's a function of, I don't know if that has anything to do with the show. It might just be a function of them printing more text on cards. We have to worry more about what the cards do than what they're called. But that's very true. Yeah. I have the same problem. I hardly remember card names anymore.
Now, I've actually been thinking about this, and I pulled in a bit of my knowledge of pedagogy. So when you're learning something new, for those that don't know, I'm a teacher. I did a master's on this. When you're learning something new, it's much easier to understand the function of something than the thing to call it. So, for example, when I'm teaching physics, I will often avoid using the name of a physics concept until I have already shown students what it is. For example, when working with energy, we build up the idea of certain types of energy associated with motion, energy associated with a thing being stretched or pulled, and energy associated with a thing being lifted off of the surface of Earth, in Newtonian stuff at least. So I do that long before I come up with the names, so to speak, for any of these things. Before I say kinetic or before I say gravitational potential, I make sure students know what those things are. So I think with cards, we know how cards work, right? Functionally, we have a pretty good understanding. Even just in this very episode, I think you said the one rare from the pack. It's a 3 mana 3/1. It involves returning itself from graveyard to hand. Do you remember what it was called? I don't.
I actually do, but
okay. Well,
I think I do. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Master of Death.
Yeah. Okay. You're lucky this time. But anyway, this is an actual principle of learning, that it's much easier to remember the function of something, and it's much easier to remember the name of something once you know the function of something. So it kind of has to go in that order. You have to know what a thing does, how it works first, and then you can name it. But if you try to say the name of something first and then associate it with a concept that they learn after, it's more just memorizing. It's rote memorization, and that's not really true learning. So I think that's probably why I found it harder to remember card names. I remember what cards are in the set. At any given time, I still feel like my knowledge of combat tricks, for example, is spot on. I don't think I have to walk through the names of every combat trick in my head. But for example, if there's one green left up, I'm thinking, okay, well, is it the 1 mana one that gains them life and then it gets plus X, where X is the amount of life they gained? Or is the one that gives it a counter in hexproof? Or is it maybe some, I don't think I missed any, maybe it's something else. Adventurous Impulse on turn 1, who knows? But that type of thing, I think I've gotten much worse at. For example, I don't know if I could name half of my favorite cards from ZNR right now.
No, well, and the other thing, I mean, when it comes from like a moving from set to set perspective, we don't really have, or at least I don't have the bandwidth to, or I suppose you could say like the hard drive space to keep track of the names from older sets. I have to focus on the set that we're talking about now. And even then, a lot of times we are in the middle of an episode and like, I don't remember what that card name was. We just have to rattle off the text that it had, even for the current set. So I think there are a lot of confounding factors there, but you know, what you mentioned is definitely a contributing factor. I'm also much more of a visual learner, so I will, like, I could still look at the art of a card and be like, oh, that card does this and it costs this much mana.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to do the same thing with the names.
So anyway, thanks for all your questions, people. That was fun. We got some really good ones in there, and get ready to start asking more listener questions next week. We're going to need to create a new backlog for all those. And don't worry, we're not done. We've got some plans for this upcoming year. I mean, we made it 1 year. I think we can make it maybe 2, perhaps, maybe more. Who knows?
Yeah, I think we can make it another year. I would like to think that the first year is the hardest, and it's only uphill from here. We shall see. Yeah. But you know, that begs the question: what's coming next? So we've got a few things in the backlog. We got a few ideas. We're not going to necessarily share all immediately right now, but of course, you know, the first thing, and this totally wasn't the last idea we came up with, and we just bumped to the top of this list. We want to improve the show in the second year. That's
oh, thank God.
That's something we want to make sure that we do. Definitely don't want to stagnate. Don't want to go backwards. We'd like to improve.
Speak for yourself. I want to make the show worse.
Yeah, you know, I don't even doubt that that's true in some capacity.
I want to make it weirder, at least. How about that?
That's fair. We also want a lot more guests. We mentioned that we've reached out to some folks that we haven't heard back from. It'd be cool to be able to get some of them on, and even some other folks we haven't thought about yet. Cool to just have more guests. I think we both enjoy that, and the audience enjoys that as well. We really want to improve the Discord and do more with the Discord, make that more interactive, make it more involved, and make people more enjoy being there more, enjoy their time on the Discord more. Definitely going to keep writing articles for CardSphere as long as they'll have us doing that. And we are also planning to expand the Patreon benefits. We have quite a few ideas, and we met with some of our patrons, our founders, to discuss some things that they would like to see and some suggestions that they might have. So we have some ideas coming up for the Patreon. We're also hoping to expand the YouTube at some point, do more non-episode related content there. I mentioned that idea I had about going through my own draft logs and just trying to improve myself, and hopefully that'll help others. Maybe just doing typical draft videos on there, things of that nature, maybe some other concepts we come up with. But definitely want to expand the YouTube in this next year, and possibly more streaming. That's been hard to keep an actual schedule on, but you know, maybe we can do more of that. And again, we wanted to make sure that we mentioned the survey. Please, please, please fill it out. All of these things on what's coming next are just our thoughts on what you guys might like. Tell us what you actually like and what you don't, and we can make sure to craft the show in such a way that it will benefit our fan base. Well, I think that about does it for us this week. Thank you all for an excellent year. Thank you for keeping us doing this and all your support. And yeah, we just can't thank you enough. We're really excited for our second year and what's coming next. So keep an eye out on those giveaways. We've got, you know, just about 24 hours until that drops from when this episode is released. If you're not in the Discord already, check it out. The link to that is in the episode description, as well as on our Twitter page. If you're interested in supporting the show and getting more involved on the Patreon level, definitely check that out at patreon.com/draftchaffpod. And if you want to reach out to us on social media, you can find Ben at BetaFish1 or myself at Rannick Alfredian. The show is at Draft Chaff Pod. Thanks again, everybody. You're the best.
So I thought long and hard about what to make the sign off for our 1 year anniversary spectacular. And by this point, you know, we've had a good week. We've had a bunch of giveaways. Tomorrow the winners will be announced. And I think this is a pretty great episode. This is an all-timer. This is a lot of fun. Some really great questions. And it got me thinking, well, for the last year, we kind of had a thing going. Like, you started off the episode and then I kind of wrap up the episode. So I was thinking, just this once, the sign off is yours.
Oh God, you're telling me
pick
that
the
now
topic.
at the end of the show?
You pick the topic. I put you on the spot. It could be anything you want. It's just what I do. Something from Magic Twitter recently, something you saw, a thing that's popped in your head. You're on the spot. What's our sign off?
Okay, I think I'm gonna reverse it and put you back on the spot. I'm
God,
curious.
okay.
I'm curious. You've mentioned before you had a brief stint where you were talking about this. Did you decide on a pet? Do you know what you're doing with your pet?
Okay. First of all, this is a cop out. Just putting this down.
Oh, I'm well aware.
Honestly, I've been thinking about it. So I'm moving apartments in about a month, which means that adopting something like a cat, which I was considering, might not be great because they like to kind of have habits, and just transitioning any kind of, I guess, big mammal pet from one place to another can be messy. My brother and sister-in-law actually just adopted a dog, and I finally met their dog. It is extremely cute. His name is Walnut, and I think he just got his cone off like yesterday, so good for him. And getting some interaction with Walnut kind of reminded me, like, oh yeah, having a pet is awesome, but also they were telling me, oh yeah, he just, like, we can't get him to poop solid right now, which has been a mess. And I was like, that's right. There are downsides to this too. So it's nice having a brother with a dog, because then you can just go and hang out with the dog you get all the fun of owning a dog without any of the mess.
Yeah, it's like being an uncle or a grandparent.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I got to just, give Walnut a ton of treats. And he was playing with me, running around, asking for scratches, giving me the dog eyes, asking for steak, that kind of thing. And then, like, my brother had to pick up all the poop and take him for walks. And, like, this is awesome. This is great. So I think for now I'm gonna bask in that enjoyment and reevaluate once I've moved into my new apartment. I'm thinking I might start with something smaller. I'm thinking some plants. I think I might want to be a plant guy. I'm a green player at heart. We all know this.
That's true.
But I wouldn't necessarily say I have the greenest of thumbs in real life. I have been known while gardening to rip out things that I thought were weeds that were not. But honestly, anything can be a weed, right? So, yeah. I don't know. I think at some point the cat option might come back on the table. Maybe dip into green-white a little bit. But for now, I think I'll probably stay mono green.
No. You could get a cat and dip into green black. I think that still fits very, very fine.
But like cat oven? Look, I'm gonna get kicked out of my apartment if I try some of that.
I would never condone animal abuse. That is not something I'm for. But yeah, I mean, at least cats are a little more self-sufficient than dogs. They kind of do what they want and just do their own thing. But that's cool. Yeah, thanks for the update.